Welcome to Musical Talk. I'm Dominic McChesney. This week we have two interviews for you. The first is one that I conducted with Alisdair Kitchen about his new production of Marry Me a Little, which is about to open at the Drayton Arms in South Ken. And the second is a Musical Talk field trip that myself and Tonia took to go and see Strictly Ballroom, now playing at the Piccadilly Theatre in the West End. So without further ado, let's get on with it.
Musical Talk, the UK independent musical theatre podcast.
Today I'm sat with Alisdair Kitchen.
That's right.
I don't know why I paused in the middle of that. And we're going to have a little chat about your production of Marry Me a Little, which is on at the Drayton
Arms, yeah.
Drayton Arms.
Yeah, in
So,
Kensington.
first of all, can I just say thank you very much for inviting me into your lovely home.
Not at all.
And with a cup of tea. Can we just tell us some background about yourself and how you got to the position with your company and also with producing Marry Me a Little?
Sure. Yeah. I don't really like talking about myself, but I suppose that's the object.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Exercise, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so I started putting on things, producing, I suppose, back in 2010, 2011. So I started, my background is as a classical musician, so I started, if I depends how far I wind back the clock, but I started piano when I was 3.
Yes. Good Lord.
I'll speed up, I won't go year by year. Cut a long story short, I ended up at the Royal College of Music for my degrees, so I did undergraduate and masters in piano at the Royal College of Music, where I worked with a lot of singers, and that quickly became my main passion. But I didn't do a lot of opera actually when I was there. That sort of came a little bit after.
This was classical singing.
Classical singing, yeah. So I did a lot of classical song accompaniment. That was one of my main interests. But I kind of had a bit of a baptism of fire with opera when I played for a course in Italy. In, if my memory serves me, I think it was in 2008. And that, having not really done any opera before, but worked with singers a lot, and that just kind of blew my mind. And I really wanted to get into it, but I knew that having relatively little experience, no one was necessarily going to give me an opportunity.
Yes.
So I thought, well, I'll try and put on some things myself. And so I had a friend who was interested in stage direction at the time, because my main interest back then was not at all directing, it was conducting.
Right.
So which is, often quite closely allied to piano playing, it's quite a common combination. Mm-hmm. And so we teamed up and started throwing on things, and we were very lucky to get a break quite early on at the Rye Arts Festival down in Sussex.
Yes.
Which is actually pertinent for this discussion because they're the co-producers on this
project.
Oh
right, okay, yes.
And so we did a rather obscure opera back in 2011 with them, and surprisingly, it went. We didn't mess it up, and we were invited back the next year to do some more, and it's kind of carried on from there. So that was my introduction into actually sort of producing things. The way that I got into directing was because the friend that I was running things with at the time, after a couple of years, he decided it wasn't quite for him, and we parted ways.
Yes.
But we were still getting requests for doing operas. And I thought, I don't know any other stage directors. So I thought I might give it a go myself. And we did La Traviata. So this was back in 2014, I think. So that was the first thing I directed. And I conducted it as well. So it was a bit, it sounds like a real megalomaniac.
Wow.
But it was, I found them to be quite complementary activities, actually.
Yes.
Because I think that when you're putting on something yourself, and you're the overall boss, you tend to have an overall conception of what you want.
Absolutely.
And so I tried that, and again it didn't go badly, so I thought, well, I'll carry on with this. And around that time as well, I forged a connection with the Drayton Arms, actually, because until then the only people who were willing to employ me with the Rye Arts Festival, very trusting. And so I thought this was an opportunity to do some things in London, and it's right around the corner as well from the Royal College of Music, which is where I studied and where I work on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
So it was perfect. So we put on some operas there. So to sort of zoom ahead again a little bit, I started doing some plays about 18 months ago. It was my first sort of toe in the water of doing spoken drama. And so last year I made my own sort of, arrangements isn't the right word, is it really? Adaptations of the Duchess of Malfi. I made a cut of the Duchess.
So
of
going for the light, straight
exactly.
in, straight.
So
nothing too heavy.
Yeah, exactly. So I did that, and at the cockpit actually was the first presentation of that, and then again, staying with the heavy stuff, Hedda Gabler was the next thing, and we actually did them in repertoire at the Drayton Arms about 7 months ago. It was last autumn, and they went well. So I must like to expand my horizons, also set challenges, because then I started to nose around musicals.
It's quite a jump from doing Puccini to Ibsen to suddenly to Sondheim.
Yeah, it is a bit, yeah.
It's not really, I suppose, because Sondheim is probably, one of the heavyweights of...
Yes, I certainly feel...
musical theatre.
Yeah, but his style of composition, having now read a lot about him and seen lots of interviews and things...
I would just like to point out that the microphone is being kept level by... It's set on top of Finishing the Hat, Musical Talk's recommended book of the decade, I believe. So.
The Bible.
Other Sondheim books are available.
Yeah.
So...
Yes, jolly useful book actually. Yeah. I'll probably get on to talking about that. Yes, no, he would, I think, strongly recoil from too much of an association with, certainly with opera, which is understandable, but he was, of course, trained classically with Milton Babbitt and others. So I feel like it's not such a jump as it could be. I feel there's at least a bridge that I can walk along with it. Like many people, I've just become completely obsessive about him.
It happens, doesn't it? It does happen.
But then you meet an odd person who will say, I shouldn't call them an odd person, but I mean an odd as in...
No, we can say odd person, it's fine.
Either odd or just odd in the terms of, fewer percentage points compared to the general population who don't like him. And
but they're usually the people who go, I don't like Sondheim. Oh, I love that Into the Woods.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like the people who say, I don't like musicals, except for Chicago. Or
except for this big long list.
I won't say, I nearly said La La Land. Anyway, moving on. So out of the musicals, can I ask, was Marry Me a Little the first choice or the first thing that that you set on, or was there something else?
To be perfectly honest, it wasn't my first choice, and that's not anything to do with the piece at all. It's just because I didn't know of it, that it wasn't my first choice. I did initially explore doing The Last 5 Years.
Okay.
Mainly because I was looking for something that could be done on a smaller scale.
Yes.
Because the Drayton Arms is, it's a wonderful space, actually, among smaller venues. It seats 51, but it's got quite a deep... I don't know why I'm talking about the stage of it now, but it's actually quite a versatile space is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
But I think it nevertheless, because it's small,
yes.
You want to find something that's not going to be too overwhelming in there.
Yeah.
And so I was looking for, two-handers, and The Last 5 Years is, an obvious two-hander. But I applied for the rights, and Jason Robert Brown said that he felt the piece was being done a little bit too much in London at the moment, or in recent times. So fair enough. So I started nosing around the rest of the MTI catalogue, and I discovered this delightful Sondheim work. So I thought, that sounds interesting, and I dug out a recording, and it's just full of such wonderful music. Now I'm sort of in the throes of publicising the show, always conscious that it's described as a collection of sort of trunk songs and stuff that was cut. And that makes it sound like it was all a bit crap or something. But they're actually... they of course weren't cut because they were substandard, but they were cut because they didn't fit into the show for practical reasons, the shows that they're from. But they are just wonderful. There isn't a duff number in the selection.
So tell us a little bit more about the show, the concept behind the show, because it was conceived not by Sondheim, was it? It was
conceived, I believe, originally by Craig Lucas, and I think the connection was that he was singing in the ensemble of Sweeney Todd for the premiere.
Right.
And he must have got on with Sondheim, and they were chatting, and he said that he knew that there was songs that must have been cut from other musicals, and Sondheim kindly lent him a variety of this music that had never made it into things.
Gosh.
And he put together this show. So the introduction in the higher material does have this sort of little mini essay that's signed off by both Sondheim and Craig Lucas. So I know that Sondheim had quite a hand in the original show, but it's definitely Craig Lucas's baby as well, and Norman Renee as well, who was the director of the original production, which was in I think 1980. So, yeah, but the central conceit of it really is, because it's a review, you know, the plot is a little on the thin side.
Yes.
But it's quite a clever conceit. So the idea is that there are two singletons living in New York, both have studio apartments, one above the other. So one's in like 2F, one's in 3F or something.
Yeah.
And they've never met, but they both are lonely and single, and so they come home on a Saturday night, which is incidentally one of the musicals from which a lot of the songs come from.
Yes.
And I don't want to make it sound like they're feeling too sorry for themselves, because that can make a bit of a boring show. They're just a bit lonely,
right?
And they're wishing that they had someone to share their lives with, really. Saturday nights alone is a recurring thing for them, right. And they enter into their own minds, and they have these fantasies, just while they're going about their everyday business. One of them, the man, because they're not given names, it's just the man and the woman,
right?
And the man is a writer of some description. The woman doesn't have a specified profession, but we are imagining that she's a professional lady. We're setting it, incidentally, in
a professional lady.
A lady by profession. What I mean is by that,
you don't mean a lady of, of the night.
No, not that. That sounds terrible. No, not that at all. What I mean is that she is a young professional.
Right.
Just to clarify.
Sorry, I didn't got my monocle then.
Could have taken the show in a different direction. No, but I think what I should have probably prefaced that with is that we are setting this kind of in the period when it was conceived. So
right,
it's not actually in 1980. I've taken it back a couple of years into the late 70s. That's when a lot of the music in the show is from that. Well, including some pieces from the 50s actually, but there's a lot of stuff from that decade. I was keen to retain something of that period in the setting. I know that recent revivals have tended to fully modernise it and involve mobile phones and all
yes,
sort of gimmicks.
It's an interesting decision, because the advancement. I was thinking about this recently in relation to another thing completely, which was a play, which was the advancement of technology in the last 10, 15, 20 years has been so incredible that things from the 80s now are very much period pieces, because they are tied very much to this just before the birth of huge technology. Whereas you don't think of it, you just think of it being yesterday or whatever.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you go, oh no, but actually that would have changed the whole situation. If they could have picked up a phone, if
That's right.
this modern day, you automatically go
on Tinder or something.
Yes, exactly. Or at least on Facebook. So even I'm sure that loneliness is still a problem.
An issue,
but it is still an issue. Yes.
Yeah.
Facebook has definitely opened up the world and other things as well.
Yes.
And like I said, Tinder and
I think there's a certain, maybe it comes from just the nature of the material, but there's a certain kind of, I don't mean this in a twee way, but a certain kind of innocence about a lot of the music.
Yes.
And the lyrics, and I feel that it doesn't quite sit well in a fully modernised setting.
Right.
And there are other sort of just more perhaps direct anachronisms that maybe arise. There's a number quite early on where the woman, as she's called, is having a sort of a free fantasy about dancing.
Right.
And a lot of the dances that are named in the lyrics are just not. It's not that someone wouldn't be interested. I mean, we have Strictly Come Dancing nowadays, of course. It's not relevant. But there are just certain things which set it in period more than kind of grate slightly for me. Fully modernised. I mean, I'm not against modernisation at all. I mean, if it's right. I mean, I feel a lot of the things that I've done I have actually modernised. But this just didn't quite seem right.
Well, it just seemed complete already. If you set it in the time when it was written, or you embrace that, then you don't have to solve those problems or take the same adaptation solutions that other people have taken.
Yes, yeah. And I think hopefully that this might distinguish our production among others. I mean, I believe, and I could be wrong in this, but I do believe that it hasn't played in London for at least 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
So it's not going to be directly fresh in audiences' minds if they have seen it before.
Yes.
But I know that last production again was modernised. So this is hopefully a distinguishing feature of our show, that we're sort of doing it in period, as it were.
And some productions I've read have changed the dynamic of the couples. So they might have had a same-sex couple, or they've actually had multiple couples. There's one production where, depending on which night you go, you get a different couple.
A different pairing. Which is a really cool idea.
That's a very nice idea. It's a bit like Clue the musical or something.
Yeah.
Sorry, now my brain's gone off on a weird tangent because there is a musical of Clue. But you've gone for the traditional casting.
Yes, I have. Again, not for any particular reason other than I felt drawn to the original version. It's not that I wasn't trying to think of clever things to do with it. I mean, I hope I have come up with clever things within the context of the original, but I'm always conscious as a director of trying to serve the work. I mean, I'll give you a good example of the sort of thing that I was thinking of that just always reinforced me coming back to the original, and that's through the design. Mm-hmm. So I think that one of the challenges of this piece is that it's set in a studio apartment. So it's a New York studio apartment. Brooklyn, I think, is where it's supposed to be based by the reference to Flatbush Avenue.
Okay.
And particularly when you're doing it in a small space as we are, if you put an apartment on stage in all its glory, down to the last detail, not only is that actually quite expensive to do, when the show is concerned with sort of fantasies and memories, I mean, the characters really spend 90% of the time in their own heads, rather than it's not in the present moment. It's always either a recollection of why they're in this mental state or whatever, or it's a free fantasy.
Right.
And it's always in their heads. And so what I wanted to have was the sort of space that could disappear, and not having the technical equipment of sending something up into the flies or off into the wings or whatever, because they just aren't I with those things. I wanted something that was going to be a little bit more abstract, I guess more transparent, so that I could effectively make the set disappear, because it wasn't ever so present in the first place.
I'm assuming it doubles for both apartments.
It does, yeah. That's the other clever thing. So that it's apparent from the beginning that you see both characters come in. I think that the man's first, then the woman follows about a minute later, but they're not in the same apartment. They're very much just separated by a floor, which is great. I mean, there's plenty of opportunities for lots of theatrical business.
So, are they present at the same time?
Yes. So
you've got to define that they're both in their separate flats and not together.
Yes. So again, the original conception is that it's the same Saturday night for the both of them.
Right.
They've come home, perhaps a minute apart from each other. They haven't quite met. I mean, I don't want to give too much away in terms of what we're going to do with sort of threading this story through. I guess that the hopeful thing about the piece, because there's nothing worse than sitting through, an evening of people sitting around feeling sorry for themselves.
Yes,
that's
indeed,
really dull. So I think it's important to have that element of hope, and in this case it's that they're only a floor away from meeting each other and being at the end of their loneliness.
Yes.
And so it's a kind of will they, won't they meet, and how might that happen? So that's the conceit with the apartment. So it's you only see one apartment.
Right.
It's not like a split screen. There's one apartment, but they're both inhabiting it.
It's not one person goes in and one person goes off. And
no, I mean, there's sometimes a bit of one will go off to another room.
Right.
Someone will go to the bathroom, say, someone else might deliver a number in the living room or something like that. But no, they're very much in the same space. I mean, the one thing that you can play around with is that even though it's the same Saturday night for them chronologically in reality, when they go into their memories, of course, that puts you into a different time period.
Yes.
And there are little glimpses of why they're in their situations, in particular in terms of the sort of previous relationships that they've had.
Right.
So, for example, there's a hilarious number actually where the man with the capital M is talking about a relationship that he had with someone that he nicknames Hyphenated Harriet.
Right.
Who basically had this kind of, she couldn't decide whether she was more suited to being uptown or downtown in Manhattan, and so she had sort of two completely separate lives and this sort of thing, and it clearly got on his nerves, shall we say. So there's a very funny number about that. And then there's a very sort of wistful number from the woman where she's recalling, well, at least in our interpretation, she's recalling a previous relationship.
Yes.
That went sour. So you do have these kind of flashbacks, I guess, and memory flashbacks to things, but otherwise, it happens all on the same Saturday night.
Yes.
But to return to what I was saying about the set, and again, like this sort of, when a director's vision, collides spectacularly with the actual work. I had this, what I thought was quite a neat idea of going very abstract with it and having not an apartment at all, but kind of photographic cyclorama, those kind of infinity walls.
Yes.
Which would enable you to change, if it was white,
Yeah.
then with lighting you can change the colour of it and do all sorts of clever things.
And projection.
And projection, indeed, yeah. And I was just going to have this completely abstract space with a couple of chairs in it, and I thought, yeah, maybe that's all we need,
Yes.
I mean, maybe that's a good idea for another show, but I was constantly butting against the material itself.
Right.
And so I've gone back to the original of having this apartment on stage, but actually I've got a little model of it over there, which is no good for a podcast, is it? But
no. I can describe it.
But yes, it's basically it's really the outline of an apartment. So
I see. Yes, I can see the doorways.
yes, there's doorways and
that's
and there's a kind of kitchen unit.
with the tap. That's okay.
And there'll be real
like
furniture.
that.
So I'll have a sofa in there, and
All I can say, listeners, is you will have to go and see the show in order to
That's
get an
right.
idea of what the set looks like. Because I
Indeed.
can't describe it on here. But that's brilliant. That's
so
pretty clever.
but you see what I mean about it being it's a transparent.
Yes,
yes. So though, I mean,
I like the
it won't be that
suggestion
colour, by the
of walls. It won't be that colour.
No, they've just thought the straws.
In bright puce.
Yeah.
Doorways in bright puce.
Yes,
That's
they'll
very
be
clever.
painted, but, it can either appear like a very concrete apartment,
Yes.
or it can kind of disappear, and that's the best I could come up with.
Is
for-
the Drayton Arms? Is it in pros or is it a traverse?
I mean, it's a black box basically.
Right.
So it's a really glorious pub in South Kensington,
Yes.
and the theatre is upstairs, and it's, as I might have alluded to earlier on, for a black box, it's a very I would say it's a very flexible space,
Right.
Because it's not, for a start, it's got raked seating, so everyone has a really good view.
Yes. This seems like it's a perfect fit, really. It seems
Yeah,
like
I think
it's
so. I mean, they do a number of musicals there. I think they're developing a good thread in musicals.
Is it a book musical? Is there actually a book? Is there a libretto, or is there?
No, so it's
sung through.
It's completely sung through. Yeah, there's no spoken dialogue at all. There's plenty of detailed instructions in the original material.
Okay.
So you're not at a loss to know what to do.
Right. There is a description of this plot.
Yeah. So
yeah.
there very much is to make that clear, there very much is a plot. Don't go fully expecting a grand conceived book musical. It's obviously
Right.
not that.
And neither is it a Sondheim review.
Exactly, it's not just a bunch of songs. I mean, it would work well. It'd be a delightful evening just to listen to the songs, and 16 of them I think there are. But
And
no,
is it one act?
It's all the way through. Yeah, one act.
And now the shows that they took the songs from, I understand that it's Saturday night.
Yep.
A little night music.
Mm-hmm.
Company, of course.
Indeed.
So I think a lot of people know the cut songs from Company. I mean, this is the wonderful thing with Sondheim, is that people who are fans of Sondheim are very familiar with his cut songbook.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
So-
they're no longer as. I mean, I think that's one thing. When the show was first done, I think these things were very much rare discoveries that
Yes.
people wouldn't have heard. But now, obviously, yes, your aficionado will have definitely heard of some of them. Yeah.
And I noticed that they put in there won't be trumpets,
Yes.
which obviously wasn't cut.
No, not all of them are cut songs. I mean, "Marry Me a Little" as well. The title number
Yes.
wasn't cut originally. I don't think. I may be wrong there.
No,
Was it?
I may be wrong, but I thought
Well,
it
no,
was.
you'll know more than me probably.
I've known Company for quite a while, but I thought
If our
it
microphone
was.
wasn't resting on the Bible, we could check
It is, yes. Unfortunately, it is. So we can't. Do write in, listeners. The songs from the other shows. So there's songs from Company,
Yes,
Saturday Night,
Saturday night,
a little night music,
indeed.
which is interesting, and there's a few songs from that. I know Bang,
Yes, Bang's in there.
but I know Bang from Putting It Together,
Okay,
the review,
Yes.
the Sondheim review.
right.
And I didn't realise that Bang was from A Little Night Music
Yeah.
originally.
Yeah, and
So
that's
it's quite a modern sounding song for some reason. Isn't it?
It is, and actually, this is the one number where actually I found it a little bit awkward, the lyrics of that one, because it's just quite an awkward lyric. Because it's basically it's about a man comparing the conquest of a woman to a kind of act of war, And
so it's obviously sung by Count Magnus in... Do you know Little Night Music?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
So it is absolutely right in the context of that, in that context, because he is just a womanising pig.
Yeah,
he's a horrendous character.
It makes total sense.
So it does make sense. But yes, it does.
I think that the issue here is that because... Obviously, that's a show with a very clear narrative to it, and we understand that is the nature of his character.
Yes.
In this show, you don't have an opportunity to really give a full background of the characters, and so it can kind of stick out as seeming like a very misogynistic, very, very un-PC thing to say. from the words of our man.
Yes.
That requires some sort of negotiation in the staging. We haven't yet gone into actual rehearsal, so this is all stuff that's still in my head. But I'm thinking that I might have it because he's a writer, the man.
Right.
And I'm thinking if I put this into the context of something that he's writing, a fiction that he's writing, then it doesn't seem so bloody offensive.
Right.
But it is difficult taken out of the context of.
But in the context of the actual show, he sings more tender songs as well, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. And
it's not how in the original show, without giving too much away, did he get away with singing Bang?
I don't know exactly, because as far as I know, it wasn't documented on a video or anything, so I'm not quite sure how they got around everything. I mean, there are a few little hints of instructions, but one thing is for sure, and that's the way that it's musically organised.
Yes.
So what they, rather than putting Bang in as just a song in its own right, they've split a song called All Things Bright and Beautiful, which is from Follies originally.
Right.
And they do like a verse or two from that.
Yes.
And then there's this very hard cut into Bang, which then plays in its entirety before melting very, very evocatively back into the remainder of All Things.
Ah, right.
Which then turns out into this glorious sort of symphonic number.
So you have this kind of invasion in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think this is a good opportunity for highlighting the fact that these two people are in two apartments above and below each other.
Yes.
Because I think it's up for debate, but at the moment I'm seeing All Things as very much the woman's number. So while it's a duet and they're both speaking, it seems to be a kind of a memory stroke fantasy from her. I think more of a memory in this case of a previous relationship that she's been in with Ben. And Ben is named.
Right.
So that immediately makes you feel like she's talking about a real person, a previous relationship.
Yes.
And so I think... Yes. So you have this striking juxtaposition there. So I think you start off in the woman's story.
Yes.
And then suddenly we're in the apartment below, that we see the shot of imagination in the man's writing for Bang. And then we melt back upstairs to the woman's apartment. So it's a really clever blending of two songs together.
That's nice. So, I mean, they obviously were aware of that even in the original production.
Yeah.
And are you having... I'm just wondering, and this may be a simple no, but because you're dealing with several different types of Sondheim shows, are you aware of having to deal with different Sondheim periods and different Sondheim shows and different Sondheim tones, or are you treating it as one show?
I think that's a really good question. I am definitely aware of the difference in style. As I alluded to earlier, I think that the numbers which come from much earlier shows, things from the 50s, for example, have a very different tone, which even in our period production feel like they're from another world.
Right, yes.
So they can't be the natural words of the people who are singing, because it just feels foreign, and therefore it seems like a fantasy.
Right.
Which is, an integral part of the show.
And there's songs from The Last Resorts, which is an unproduced musical of his.
And that's that was the number that I was least convinced about when I first heard the sort of cycle. But I've grown to really, really like it. And it's put in a place... Again, we were talking earlier, maybe before we turned our microphone on, about seeing the logic in what Craig Lucas and Norman Renee put together as their original sequence, because in every revival since, it seems that people have moved things around, with permission of course, but some quite substantial changes. It's a hilarious little song. It's another sort of fantasy thing about playing golf. So it starts with them kind of yawning, doing all this thing, because they've got up frighteningly early to play a round of golf,
Yes.
this couple, and it's really, really witty, and it's just a perfect little bit of light relief in this sort of bitter section that we've been talking about.
All right.
So you don't want to, slip
So
your
in the
wrists.
context
It's
of the
kind
whole show, you need that
yeah,
moment.
I feel
where
because at first I thought, well, maybe I should try and ask for it to be cut, but actually I think it really serves a purpose there.
Yes.
The other really, they're all fantastic numbers, but the one that I have got permission to move actually,
Yes.
is Two Fairy Tales, which is another little night music number.
Right.
It's another fantastic song, and in the original show,
Yes.
it's the first number, but I found this quite perplexing because then in the original cast recording, Craig Lucas, incidentally, was the original man as
Right.
well in that. It's not the first number. It starts with Saturday Night.
Right.
Which is a much more sensible start because
Yes.
it's a real scene setter song.
Yes.
And so I asked, can we start with Saturday Night? And we've been given permission for that. So I was trying to find a place to put Two Fairy Tales.
Yes.
Maybe I won't say where we've put it, but I think I found a good juxtaposition for it in the set. Yeah, another one with really, as you'd expect, I guess, from Little Night Music, it's got the most wonderful harmonies.
Yes.
And it's the one reason why it's great for this show is that it deals with even its original context, two people in separate rooms, so it fits with the two apartments idea. And they're recalling a fairy tale that was told them respectively by their mother and by their father, depending on whether they're the man or the woman. And it's got lots of funny lines in it, but again it has this undercurrent which I'm hoping that we can bring out, because it can be done just as a kind of a patter number for laughs.
Yes.
But I think, again, for me, to keep on banging on about the harmony, but that speaks to me that it can have a greater profundity to it.
Yes, yes. And then there's also songs that were cut from Follies.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, are they the pastiche songs, or are they the diegetic songs, or I don't know if you know that phrase. It's a favourite of musical talks, diegetic and non-diegetic.
I was listening to one of the podcasts the other, and a similar comment was made. Yes.
I'd never heard of it before I started listening to musical talk, and we're still the only people who really talk about it.
That must be why it rings a bell, because it was only the other day that I heard it on the show. Well, yes, they're the pastiche ones.
Right. Now, tell us about your cast.
Yes. Okay. Well, the other distinguishing feature
Yes.
of our production, I should say, is, considering that we're doing it in the United Kingdom,
Yes.
is that it's an all-American cast.
Right.
There's only two of them,
Okay,
but they're both
it's
American.
still all American.
The man is Keith Merrill,
Right.
and the woman is Stephanie Schmalzley, both of whom are wonderful performers, both equally trained as actors and singers.
Right.
Which is, I think, just obviously crucial for a Sondheim show.
Absolutely.
And both actually have quite a strong background in classical music, which I just flag up. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. For me, they equally have a lot of pedigree, a strong pedigree in musical theatre.
Yes.
I think there's something about, like you said earlier, there's not a note that's out of place. And I think that just there's the one advantage of coming at it from at least having your classical hat on temporarily, is that you do treat the score like a classical musician would treat the score.
Yes.
That's certainly how I'm approaching it.
Yes.
Is that there's a reason why he's written it like that.
Yes.
If you've got that hat on for a little bit, then you can really get it right, and
Absolutely.
then think about where the liberties can be taken.
Yes.
Rather than coming at it with an approximation.
The liberties should never be with the notes. Yes.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
And the technical.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And have you worked with them before?
Yes, I have. Well, Stephanie was in both my shows at the Drayton Arms, the last two that I did. But they've mainly been operas, but the two plays that we spoke about earlier. Stephanie was Hedda in Hedda Gabler.
Right. Yes.
And the Duchess in the Duchess of Malfi.
Yes.
Keith I met when I was auditioning for Hedda.
Yeah.
I put out my spotlight breakdown and got an unexpected deluge of... Actually, it shouldn't be unexpected, but the thing is, because I was new to casting actors, you see, because I'm used to the way it works with classical music,
Right.
which is automatically much more kind of selective. Anyway, but
Yeah.
Keith was one of them, and he stuck out to me actually because he was American, because I'm aware that it's quite difficult for Americans to work over here
Yeah.
in the theatre. So I thought let's he had a good CV as well, and I thought let's see him. And overall cast balance, I decided to go in a different direction with Hedda, but he did a great audition. So I thought I want to work with him.
So you've got your actors, and what about the band?
So,
I say band.
Yes, the band. The useful thing, again, from the point of view of producing something small scale, is that it's just a piano.
Right.
Or in our case, it's a very good keyboard, portable keyboard, which we've actually used for operas which we've done there, and no one's really been much. I mean, you can see that it's not a real piano, but when you purely from an auditory point of view, you don't feel like you lose much. But I am keeping the show acoustic.
Right.
So I don't, but based on my experience of doing operas in there, I don't think I'll need to amplify the keyboard beyond its onboard speakers.
That's interesting, yes.
I certainly won't be amplifying the singers.
Right. That's nice.
Because it's an intimate show, and it just doesn't need it.
Well, it's about intimacy as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, that's
it's sort of written in.
Yes. And will you be playing?
I will be playing on
else?
I've got someone else to play for the majority of it. I will be playing for a couple of nights.
Bingo nights.
Oh, bingo nights, yeah. Actually, it's just for expediency, because I have a wonderful pianist that I work with regularly, Jonathan Musgrave, his name is, and he's just brilliant. And I'd love if he was played for every single night, but unfortunately there are a couple of dates that he can't make, and so rather than getting in someone who doesn't know the show, I thought, well, it makes the most sense for me to play.
Right, yes.
I can play the piano,
yes,
which is fortunate. But no, it's just otherwise it's spreading myself a little too thinly.
Now, tell us where the show's on and the dates that it's on, and how much are the tickets, and where they can get all information.
Stuff. Yes, certainly. So, as we said, the show is on at the Drayton Arms Theatre, which is in South Kensington. You've got a choice of South Kensington Tube, Gloucester Road Tube, the kind of equidistant on the District Line. It's only about a 5-minute walk away from either of those. We open on the 8th of May.
Right.
We close on the 26th of May. We do 6 shows a week, so it's Tuesdays through to Saturdays, and we have a Saturday matinee as well. So our days off are Sunday and Mondays.
Right. The times of
so the evening performances are 7:30 p.m.
Right.
And matinees are at 3 p.m.
Okay.
Tickets very reasonably priced at £16 and £14.
Lovely.
It's a concessionary rate. There's brilliant food downstairs in the pub, I should say.
Yes.
And I believe that you get a discount on the food if you have a theatre ticket. Check that out on the website. So the place to look at is the website for the Drayton Arms. So it's draytonarmstheatre.co.uk.
Lovely.
I mentioned earlier on that this is a co-production with the Rye Arts Festival.
Yes.
And so we will be doing a couple of performances of it in Rye. So if you are in the vicinity of Rye, you can come down and see Marry Me a Little on either the 9th or the 10th of June, so a couple of weeks after we finish in London. That is at the Rye Community Centre.
The Royal Community.
The Rye Community Centre.
The Rye Community Centre.
Which is right in the old part of town, and I believe the times are still being nailed down, but it'll probably be at 7:30 on the Saturday and at 3 p.m. on the Sunday.
Lovely.
But you can look at my website for that.
Yes, which is
www.euphoniastudio.com.
Right, well, thank you very much, Al. Thank you very much for coming on to Musical Talk, and best of luck with the production. And look forward to seeing it immensely. So,
look forward to watching you.
And best of luck with the future, and
thank you very much.
Well, may it continue.
Hope so.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
This is Alan Menken, and you are listening to Musical Talk.
Hey, we've got a Musical Talk field trip, aren't we?
Yes.
Hello, Tonia.
Hello.
So I'm very well. I'm very well. And Tonia and I are at the Piccadilly Theatre, and we're about to go and see the UK production, which has just opened up, Strictly Ballroom.
Yes.
Do you know the show?
I know the film.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of the film. Practically brought up on the film.
Yes.
And my sister's a ballroom dancer, so I'm very familiar with the ballroom dancing world.
Yes.
And I nearly went to see the show in Leeds because it premiered in the UK in Leeds, but unfortunately I couldn't get a ticket because it just sold out.
Oh wow! So I didn't know that. So because I saw it 3 or 4 years ago now in Australia, in Sydney, in its first incarnation, which during that run it changed quite a lot, and I have heard that it's changed quite a lot, so I'm very excited to see what's happened to it.
I think it's had a lot of changes for a UK audience, hasn't it?
Yes.
Now, in Australia, because I was listening to the Musical Talk Mini we did on the show.
Yes.
And you said there were some songs from the film and some new numbers written for the musical. So it'll be interesting to see what's made it this far.
This is what I'm a little bit hesitant about, because apparently they've got rid of all the characters singing except one character.
Oh, that's a bit strange.
So that's I'm quite interested in how that's going to be, because there was some very funny numbers in the Australian production that I saw, which I really enjoyed, and all the main characters had songs, so it'll be interesting to see how that's developed. Now, it's definitely cashing in, of course, on Strictly Come Dancing in England. That's kind of what it's going to rely on.
So I think we talked about this on the 2016, when we were looking at what was coming in 2016, 2017, because we talked about the show in Leeds, and I was saying how I think it could do really well here because there's a Strictly audience.
Yes.
And there's obviously the fans of the film, but ballroom dancing is massive in this country and always has been. So I think people will just see the name Strictly Ballroom and automatically want to go.
Yes. I mean, you can see, I mean, we haven't even got in, but you can see this could really be a coach party show. I mean, it kind of screams out for that, doesn't it? So. And
apparently it's had quite a good response audience-wise from previews.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. Good. And Nick saw it a couple of weeks ago, didn't he?
So. He did. He saw it when it was in previews. Apparently they've written a new role for the stage musical. The part that Will Young is playing.
Oh, really?
It's a new role. It's not in the film, which is written for the musical. It's like a new addition to the show.
Oh,
so I don't know if that was in the
I can't remember.
Australia, where it's a new addition for this production. It could be quite interesting.
Yes. One thing that I loved, and I remembered when I heard the recording from our review before, was that all the announcements and the front of house when in Australia was all decorated like a really tacky ballroom dance contest, which I loved. And they've got a few posters. It's not quite the same. They've got a few posters of the different characters as you come down the stairs here. But they had these huge banners everywhere, and all the theatre announcements of 5 minutes, turn off the phone, were all done in the style of this.
Like in the film, they all exaggerate.
Yes, exactly. And you had this really Aussie girl making all these announcements, all connected to the, I forgot what it was called, Bog Off. Yeah, the ballroom. Which is very, very funny.
Yeah.
Because it was a very funny show. There was definitely flaws to it, so it'll be interesting to see how they've
I think
they've gone to.
Something you picked up on in the mini was the fact there was a lot of Australian humour in it, and I wonder how they've changed it for a British audience.
It really is very, very rooted in Australian culture, so which I don't think is that alien to English audience.
No,
so.
and certainly the audiences around the world appreciated the film. It wasn't like it was very iconic in Australia, but other audiences still appreciated the film.
Absolutely. So we'll see what it's like in the interval.
Yeah.
Okay, where's my water?
It's alright.
Okay, so here we are.
Interval time.
Interval.
Yeah.
Are you enjoying it?
Yes, I am absolutely loving it. Yeah, really
the audience are going a bit wild.
Yeah, they are. And it's also the second night, so the premiere was last night.
Yes.
And so it's the second night. You sometimes expect the energy to be less, but they're really going for it. Especially I felt towards the end of the act, they were really, really, they were giving it welly, basically.
Absolutely. It's interesting because that's the same place that they ended Act 1 in the original. It's very difficult not to compare for me.
Yeah.
So, but it is, the energy and the dancing is fantastic.
I think the first thing we said was that we were so surprised that the first act was about an hour and 20 minutes, but it didn't feel like that.
Not at all. Absolutely sped past, didn't it?
It went so fast.
Yes,
but in a good way. I felt like what I really liked about it was very cinematic. Everything really flowed and kept going. And not in a lazy way. There was no revolve or projections. It was all done, by the cast moving things around.
It's kind of like, I want to say, Strictly Ballroom Follies.
Yeah.
with having all the characters, the dancers on the scaffolding looking around. It's definitely got an air of Follies. And also you've got this kind of broken down theatre look at the back.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit strange for me.
I think what I'm finding a little bit strange about it is I'm not necessarily sure if it's a musical. And the only reason I'm saying this is, for a start, there are no original songs in it. It is all pop songs. Not anymore. So, but it's not a jukebox musical either. It's not really. It's not really a musical. It's a combination between a dance musical, danceicle, as Nick likes to call them.
With songs.
It's a dance show with songs. There's nothing wrong with that because you can tell it's definitely appealing to the audience.
Yes.
And the Will Young character is sort of acting a little bit like he was in Cabaret. He's acting like
that's a brand new character. That wasn't in the one in Australia. And I really do like that character. And Will Young is incredible. I mean, he's brilliant. And he's very, very funny.
But it also has like an extra, when you watch Strictly Come Dancing, there's the two presenters, and it's got that feel to it, but at the same time it's helping to tell the story.
Yes, and they've cleaned a lot up. I mean, in the sense that they've actually made it kind of in this weird place, because there's something about it that I think is very good. They've seemed to have made the story clearer, and Zizi Stradon she's absolutely fantastic as Fran. She's absolutely nailed it. She's funny, she's a wonderful actress and brilliant dancer.
I think actually her performances are what I'm enjoying the most. I was a bit worried after listening back to the musical Tonia you did, because it seemed like the character was undeveloped.
It wasn't. In the original production I saw, the girl who played Fran was a very capable performer, but the character wasn't. You just didn't.
Yeah, I didn't like the character.
Really like her,
and you feel like she's going on a journey. I really liked the subtle changes she did at dancing. Got better and better.
Yes,
it didn't all of a sudden she didn't just become this amazing dancer. You kind of saw this slight progression.
The
dances are incredible.
They
actually.
are very, very good. I'm missing the tone that the original had.
Yeah.
I'm missing the
zaniness. Do you think?
The slight tackiness.
Yeah, which the film has.
Of the Australian. It hasn't quite got that. I mean, it has got that in the story and the characters. Yeah. But the set is so dark, and it's kind of almost. It's not a concert performance, but it kind of. For me, I'm really missing that. I still think it works brilliant, and it's wonderful, and everyone's great in it.
It sounds like story-wise it's more concise, but
it's much slicker. They've made it much slicker. They've made things work. They made the story work, and they made the characters work.
There's only one character who sings, which is Will Young's character. It's acting as a sort of narrator. But there were a couple of times I was thinking this would be a great moment for them to be singing.
I'm really missing the original songs.
Yeah, for example, when
all the songs that they had, even when they sang the pop numbers in the past show, and when it started, I didn't like the opening. I love the opening and the original Strictly, which was this really garish waltz
I didn't
number.
like the opening in this production, actually. Not that I've seen the other production, but I didn't like. I kind of thought this is a bit pointless. The first opening number felt a bit pointless, and it could have probably started. Didn't need that number really, actually.
And then, but then it went back into.
But then it was fine.
Yes.
But I did feel like that beginning number was a little bit.
It was a bit like, oh, what are we watching here?
Yeah.
And I went, oh god.
And that's why I went, and then it was fine.
Yes.
It's fine.
I did so. But the other one had this waltz number where everyone was singing.
Yeah.
And it was these very funny lyrics to I think it was the Blue Danube. They were dancing to it, and they were singing these Blue Danube. But I am missing the characters singing.
Yeah.
And they've cut the little boy and the girl.
Oh yeah, the little boy and the girl from the film. Absolutely. Yeah.
And they were brilliant in the other one.
I mean, there are some moments where I just thought, oh, this needs a song. Like, for example, where Scott's left by himself after he's messed it up with his partner. And he does this kind of Billy Elliot moment, just the angry dance.
Yes.
But actually, I was thinking, this is a moment for a song.
Yes. Well, in the other one, they didn't have a song there. They had an angry dance, and the angry dance was awful.
Oh,
and
really?
this one is brilliant. They've made it work. And those mirrors with the characters behind, and his dance, and then he's dancing with the characters works so much better than what they did. It was an absolute mess in Australia. They had these mirrors kind of circling the stage, but they also had lights, and the lights were bounding off the mirrors and blinding the audience. So I have to say they've absolutely fixed that. They really have made it work.
I think one little criticism I have, I mean, I do know a little bit about ballroom dancing, and I felt a little bit, sometimes the stage is too crowded. It's not so much a problem with the Latin, and it wasn't a problem with the Paso Doble number, because you don't need to travel.
But you also, and you want that feeling of lots of people doing it.
Absolutely. But the waltz number at the beginning, where there were, so the quick step number at the beginning, none of the dancers could really do the steps as well as probably they required, because it's just not enough room. Ballroom dancing requires, it's possible, the stage is possibly a bit small.
Stage,
and I feel like the dancers don't really, it's not a good stage for ballroom dancing. For Latin, it's fine. It's not ballroom, it's Latin. And it revolves around the Paso Doble. But just I felt a little bit like there were just too many people on stage. It was just a bit too crowded for ballroom dancing.
Yeah. We have to mention the wiggery, because we mentioned the wiggery in the other production, and the wiggery is just
all the costumes are amazing.
The costumes and the colours.
Everything is
I wish
amazing.
the set
was a bit
reflected the costumes and the colours.
There are some nice moments though where you see nods to the film, like the Coca-Cola sign on the roof.
Yes, yeah.
But you know, when you have just Will Young singing the songs and you see them just dancing, it's like you're watching the film on stage at those points. Then that's the point.
Yeah, I think they have gone back to what it was.
Yeah,
like.
It's just like watching a film though, isn't it? Because you have the soundtrack and then you just see them dancing. It's like you've got Will Young singing the soundtrack, you just see them dancing.
Yes.
And which is not a problem.
Choices.
Yeah.
Those choices work, and certainly there are songs that were in Act 2 which I know I'm going to miss.
You're going to miss, yeah.
So
it works,
let's go and see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see whether it goes.
Hello.
Hi.
You've just come out.
Yes.
So you're buzzing.
I loved it. I'm absolutely buzzing.
Yes.
That was great.
I did. It was fabulous, and the audience are absolutely buzzing.
Yeah,
aren't they?
everyone was on the feet at the end. Everyone was invited to stand up at the end, but everybody did stand up at the end because there's always that danger.
Well, I stand up at the end because I wanted to see the stage.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's true.
But
the majority of people in there were standing up reluctantly. I think that's the danger with the British audience, is that they tend to stand up a bit reluctantly when they're told to. And actually, everyone did stand up, and
I have to admit, I stood up reluctantly, but when I got up, I was very happy I got up.
Yeah.
So, and how did you feel second half first?
So it was just about an hour. So it was, it was shorter, which tends to happen in the second half. I loved it. I thought by the end of it, I can see why they've done non-original songs. I mean, when you think about Baz Luhrmann's musical, especially Moulin Rouge, he's so good at picking songs which really do speak about the action. And actually, I did quite well. I really enjoyed it. It's some of the best fun I've had at the theatre in ages.
Yeah.
And the more I got into it, the more that it bothered me less. So no moments in Act 2 where I thought, oh, this really needs to be sung by the characters. I actually got more and more into it by the time we got to Act 2. So yeah, I was quite happy. I mean, I can't believe there was not a single weak person in the cast. Everyone was absolutely incredible.
Fantastic.
Because sometimes you get one where you think, but everyone had an amazing performance tonight.
And the accents were great, and absolutely, it's one of those casts where they're really all together and
and enjoying it. You can tell they're really having fun as well.
Yes, they did. They all looked like they were having an absolute ball. I seem to say that on Musical Talk a lot. Or the other way around, like, oh my God, why was that person up there? I have to admit, when the second half opened, I thought, what's happening? And that's weird because the first half I opened, I was like, I didn't like the beginning, the way, but then it was only for a few moments and then it changed.
I did feel like that song was necessary. It would be great to get straight back into the action.
It felt a little bit like, let's give Will Young his ballad moment, but then it was only for a minute or something. But I could sit and listen to Will Young all night. So I
thought it was great.
Well, we did.
I thought it was great. I mean, because it's a hard role to do. You've got to not be intrusive, but comment on what you're seeing at the same time. And there was bits in the background. I was watching him, and he really was reacting to the action on stage.
Yes.
But you can't do it in a way that's going to distract from what's going on. And I think none of the other characters had to do that. And it's really hard to do it subtly and do it well.
Yes. But very, very funny. I mean,
but funny at the same time.
His comic ability is excellent. It's very, very good. And I liked in the first half when he was on the roller skates. That reminded me.
Oh, because Azizi's Stralin was just absolutely gorgeous.
Oh my God, they have fixed that role.
Yeah,
I have to
wonderful.
say, from the original production, you really didn't care about Fran. Suddenly in the second half, and they fixed that role brilliantly. That you absolutely care about.
I think even more than in the film, actually, because she has that moment where she stands up to him, which you don't really get in the film.
No, they've made it more dramatic here, and they missed it in the original stage production. They also screwed up in the original stage production. They screwed up the moment when the dad speaks to the son. Whereas here, the focus was absolutely on it, and you completely got that story. The only things, if I'm going to criticise, the only things I missed, I didn't like the pseudo-folly set.
Okay.
I didn't like all the scaffolding and things. I kind of got it, but it was a bit weird and very dark for me, and I just wanted a bit more bright. Saying that as a tiny point, I missed. There was a couple of original songs that I missed.
Yeah.
There was the song that the father sings when he's telling, or when they go back in time and they tell the father. He doesn't tell the story, but when they're saying what happened to him, and he did a number. And I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this, and also the bad guy. What's his name? Barry. Barry. He had a number which was like a propaganda kind of Third Reich kind of standing there with all people doing a dance, and they cut that number. Yeah. And they give him a nightmare ballet scene. I didn't like the nightmare ballet scene.
But it was funny how he was very Trump-esque. Did you notice that? There was the jokes about the wig.
Well, that was that happened in the show before Trump even was.
But it's funny. It seems funnier now.
You think Trump hair because it's, but also he has that line.
About politics.
I could go into politics
because it was, and then some of the hand gestures he would do were very Trump. It was very funny. No, another performance in particular was Doug, the father.
Oh,
it's so subtle stuff, and it gets wonderful as it goes on.
He was brilliant. He was, and his dancing, and that moment at the end. See, even though I missed the original songs, I love the fact that, as the spirit of the dance. Yeah. Whenever Will Young, did you notice when he touched someone, they sang?
Which was
and
it was
at
so
the end when the mother
moments.
and the father sing, it was really touching, and they dance together, and it's beautiful. And you kind of go, they're doing their own style. So
I really liked that bit. I mean, I did, like I said before, I do miss some bits where you think, the characters should sing here, but when they do sing, it's really nice.
You just want them to sing more
because
they all
they've got
can.
such great voices.
I mean, these people are obviously quadruple threat. Well, triple threats quadruple threats if they were playing the saxophone at the same time. Which I'm sure they probably can.
Yeah, which we should say the band were amazing because they weren't very big. There's probably only about 6 musicians. I think I counted 6 musicians, and occasionally members of the band would come on stage, like the guitarist and the Piccadilly scene. Yeah, they're all incredible, and I'm glad they got their own little moment to come forward at the end and actually play.
Yes. I love that in the Piccadilly scene. They had that when they did the dance. They were dancing. And they were dancing to the rhythm of his heart, and then he'd take his hand off his heart and go back into real time. And they were immediately in the positions they were in before, and then they would start. And I thought that was
that was probably one of my favourite scenes, the Piccadilly scene.
Yes.
In the first half, where he's led his Piccadilly, and the Love Is in the Air scene in the first half, I think was the real big stand-up moments for dancing. It was the quality of the dancing, because as well. To dance ballroom and Latin is a very different style to dance in musical theatre style, and all these dancers are incredible. They can actually do ballroom, and some of the dancing
really
are
actually. They're so funny. I mean, sometimes you never think of a leading man or leading woman being comic roles as well, but they are incredibly funny and very touching and very good. Now the interesting thing is the reviews came out today, and they weren't
that fantastic.
It was fantastic, and I'm quite surprised actually because they've cleaned up the story from the Australian one. They've made it much clearer. And I think it works far better than it did. I do miss the songs. But
it works.
It didn't bother me too much. I missed them because I knew about them. If I hadn't known about them, I don't think I would have missed them.
I'm so surprised. Well, I think possibly what the critics might be picking up on is the fact that it's not a traditional musical. I'm not going to say that it's not a musical because it is, but it's not traditional musical. I think that might bother some people.
Yes.
But I don't understand how you could review that badly. Everyone in there was having a hoot. The cast were giving it so much energy. The audience were loving it. And it definitely has an audience.
It does. I mean, the thing is, maybe critics see so much stuff. It is a little bit, you kind of think, well, okay, it's not a jukebox musical, but is it another musical of a film? And, where are the... where are the original musicals? But there are musicals.
But I think it still has quite a lot to say. For example, I saw 42nd Street, and it's so thin on the ground story-wise. It was enjoyable, but even though it's another love story, it's another dance musical, it's another film into musical, it kind of had a message and a heart to it. It had a lot of heart to it.
It is a Cinderella story, but as it's his Cinderella story as much as hers.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the parents actually finding happiness. And I found like every single character. I felt like every single character had a journey, and I didn't feel like none of the characters that had that journey. But it wasn't resolved for them. Yeah,
I missed the kids because they have very funny parts. But I can understand I don't understand them. Well, I think it's going to do business.
I would go again. Would you go again?
I would go again.
Yeah, I'd go again.
I think it is going to do business, and I think the coaches will come and see it.
it's got an audience. I mean, you
Yeah.
could tell the people in there were Strictly fans.
Yes.
You know, Will Young fans,
Yeah.
Ballroom fans. It's got an audience. To it.
I think it will also appeal to people who aren't really caught up in the Strictly Come Dancing.
Yeah, absolutely.
My mum's obsessed by it. It doesn't really do a
It's
huge
got-
amount to me.
I think it's got appeal for
Yes.
lots of different people. It's not just the
and
Strictly lot, but it just had
if
the
you want
audience.
to have a good laugh, it's a good story it's a great comedy.
Yes.
I think it's going to run. I
Yeah.
think it will run, regardless of what the reviews that it had that it might be in the negative. I think it's interesting. In the other podcast, the mini podcast that we did all those years back, Linton described it as a popcorn musical, and it is. It is a popcorn musical. It's if you just want to go and have a really good time and I do like the little nods to Follies. I'm sure that's in taste.
It's a popcorn musical, but it has heart.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
That's
when
the
I say
thing.
popcorn, I don't mean that it's.
You don't have to
flimsy.
use your mind. Yeah, exactly.
I mean that you can sit there, and watch it. You'll still get a great story. You'll still get the message.
Brilliant.
Bravo.
Good.
Yes.
Successful field trip.
Hooray! Yes, field trip. More of these. They were very fun.
Right, home time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This episode of Musical Talk, edited and presented by Dominic McChesney. Copyright Musical Talk 2018.
For more information about Musical Talk, please visit our website at musicaltalk.co.uk. You can email us at feedback@musicaltalk.co.uk, listen to past episodes on iTunes and YouTube, and follow our social media channels on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.